it is my pleasure to introduce you to this fabulous author and wonderful book. I had the pleasure of having an early look at the book, in part because my longtime friend, Emily Andrews, who is an editor at McGill Queens, asked me to blurb the back of it. I was in Calgary and very, very sick, and I was able to I started reading the book on the flight home when the plane took off, and I read it the entire way through, which is very rare for me. And it was just so captivating. And because blurbs are short, I didn't get to say all that I wanted to, but since you're all trapped here, I'm going to tell you what I wanted to say on the back of the book that didn't quite make it. I originally wrote, in this captivating, unflinching memoir, Huda Mukbil demonstrates that love for and pride in one's country must be sutured with the courage to speak the truth. This bravery, she demonstrates, is both required and despised in Canadian national intelligence circles, which are shrouded in secrecy, give sanctuary to spies, and trade in misdirection. This book opens the black box of CSIS, deftly navigates the complicated landscape of racialization and belonging in Canada, and gives a defiant and resilient voice to the psychological toll and personal trauma of systemic racism. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Huda Mukbil. Huda is the first Black Arab Canadian Muslim woman to join Canada's security service as an intelligence officer. Her story is about resilience, determination, and breaking barriers. In this insightful book, Huda offers readers an inside look at the intricate world of intelligence, counterterrorism, and the challenges faced by security agencies around the world. Her struggle for belonging, failed by workplace misogyny and Islamophobia, and her ultimate success as a whistleblower pushed the envelope on cultural change. Please join me in welcoming Huda Mukbil.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to start by thanking the McGill Institute for the Study of Canada. I want to also thank McGill Queen University Press for publishing my book, and everyone that's put this gathering for us together. I'm going to be talking about how I joined the Canadian Security Intelligence Service in 2001 before the 9/11 attacks, and then my experience within. And this book was really important to write because it's a great example of showing why diversity matters in national security. In fact, it is, I wrote an article for the Hill Times about how systemic racism is in itself a threat to national security. First, I'll start by what I'm doing. I'm the author of Agent of Change. And I'm an instructor at the University of Ottawa, and I teach national security and diversity. I do a lot of EDI training as well with the RCMP and other security providers. And although I was an intelligence officer, my being right now and this book and my mission is really to diversify Canada's national security establishment. And a lot of people ask, why was it that in 2000 was the first entry of racialized people within CSIS? And that was, the reason is our employment equity laws. It was a deliberate sort of thing that came about. And so you'll see here, that the act itself was passed in 1986. However, there wasn't going to be audits until 1999 and 2000, and before that, CSIS was not recruiting racialized Canadians. And so when I entered CSIS, I was the third Black woman, the first Arab, and there was a clearly lack of diversity. So I began this by I took a course in national security, and everyone in class was talking about the October crisis, the RCMP, the MacDonald Commission. A lot of that didn't speak to me because I grew up in Egypt, and my recollection of those political things was the assassination of Sadat and military rule in Egypt and so on. And so it was my professor that brought me in and said, you speak so many languages. I speak Arabic, Harari, English, and French. And he thought I should seek a career in national security. And so I began to apply, and the process itself is very lengthy. It takes about a year to get your security clearance. They do field investigations on you, polygraph exams, as well as psychological exams. And so I was signed in August 2001, just a month before, and had no idea at the time that counterterrorism would be predominantly Islamic extremism. And then I found myself there on the counterterrorism floor, the only Arabic speaker, and working on really sensitive investigations, high priority investigations for CSIS. Now, the history of CSIS is that it used to be part of the RCMP, the Security Service, and following the two commissions, CSIS was established in '84. The first group of women that became intelligence officers was that year, '84. And there was 3 people in that class. So in terms of women as well, there is that lack of diversity, especially as you move up to managerial positions. And so the war on terrorism, it was, as the title here says, a living nightmare for Muslims. And so outside of the agency, my friends, family, everyone else was experiencing a lot of this, the view of Muslims as suspects, and continued harassment at airports, and the questioning that happens by security agencies, including CSIS and the RCMP. And so why is it that I had to go through this? It's really incredible that you sign up to help to defend your country, to protect public interest, and yet you find yourself a suspect within. And that was incredibly, incredibly difficult thing to go through. It started with a request to polygraph me, despite the fact that I already had security clearance, and being interrogated just like suspects, and it was just horrific, and a month before it. So my book starts with a conversation, me and the deputy director of CSIS, and him asking me to go to London to help. And this was in 2007. It was for the attacks in London, England were 7/7 and 21/7. And this was London's really 9/11 moment. And they needed someone who spoke different languages, who had counterterrorism experience and training, and would be, and has a security clearance to go in and just be plugged in and do the work. And despite the fact that I was going under such scrutiny at CSIS, I was asked to go and really selected for the diversity that I brought to the table. And I was able to provide assistance to the British, and that was an incredible experience for me. And it also proved to CSIS that there is a diversity matters, and there's really a need for people like me that are diverse within the organization. I left CSIS in year 2007. There was a group of us, myself, the first gay man, the first black woman, as well as 2 other Muslim IOs. And the 5 of us began a civil lawsuit against CSIS. And CSIS conducted a workplace assessment in the Toronto region, and This assessment indicated that there was a climate of fear within CSIS, a lack of trust in management at CSIS, lack of diversity, and we brought that because of the civil lawsuit. So I'm incredibly proud of that, and I think the recognition that these things are going on within the organization is the first step to really tackling this. So following the civil lawsuit, there was a study done by the National Security Committee of Parliamentarians. And this study here demonstrates that it's not just CSIS, it's the RCMP, it's Global Affairs, it's CSC, the military. And so it is wide and spread in the entire national security establishment. In fact, at CSIS at the time, it was 0% for visible minorities in any managerial position. And this has a lot to do with Canada and settler colonialism and the specific history of national security organizations. You know, we go back to the 1933, the Indian Act legally appointed the RCMP to be enforcing the attendance and return of children to residential schools. We have the Japanese-Canadian entrapment, of which the RCMP has taken part. We also have the really, really sad LGBTQ purge that happened due to linking them to communist threats back in the 70s, and there was a public apology by the Prime Minister in 2017, and the relationship between Black communities and the police as well. And 9/11 as well, and it was a defining moment in terms of you know, that nexus between national security and human rights, Canada not fulfilling those obligations. So the case for diversity is clear. If we want to talk about Canada, if we want to be, you know, democratic values that we hold so dear, given the demographic changes in Canada, over 25% of Canadians will be racialized Canadians. The expertise and the opportunities that racialized people can bring, threats are changing. We're looking at cybersecurity, we're looking at critical infrastructure, and all these things require that we tap into the rich resources that we have in the country. And so that change has to happen. It's also, we need to provide apolitical advice to politicians and take really part in decision-making in the country, because these organizations are really critical in terms of national security, immigration policy, and so it is really critical that we're hearing everyone's voice and are able to continue to provide public safety and national security.